And then let me. Okay, perfect. We're live. Okay. So, hello and welcome, LEC community. Thank you so much for being with us, or in the future, since this will be on our social media platforms. Thank you for coming and having a conversation with us for Maestros and Maestros. Today, I will be introducing the wonderful Doctora Marta Silvia. Doctora Silvia is an immigrant and educational leader specializing in heritage language programs. She has earned her PhD in curriculum and instruction, as well as Latinx studies from the University of Missouri, Kansas City. She is a dedicated advocate for her community. Doctora Silvia serves on several boards that advocate for our Latinx and immigrant communities. She regularly speaks on cultural and linguistically sustaining pedigrees and draws on her background in storytelling and poetry to amplify Latinx students' voices and honor multicultural identities and literacies. So without further ado, please welcome Doctora Silvia.
Gracias, Isabela.
And if I could just ask you one question, or I guess two. First, I would ask what inspired you to become an educator, and then after, could you share a moment when you realized your voice as an educator could make a difference?
Sure. Gracias, Isabela. So I became an educator out of necessity. I migrated to the United States and I needed a job and I spoke Spanish, and that was not my career. I had my graduate studies in linguistics. I wanted to be a translator interpreter, but it was easier for me to become an educator. So from that point on, I think my students, I started teaching heritage languages right away, and my students really inspired me to become an educator, and I've stayed for many years now. And then you ask me a moment where my voice.
It was what, could you share a moment when you realized your voice as an educator can make a difference?
So, not one moment. I think every day we step in our classrooms, it matters, and not just for the rest of the world, but for the students. And I think we are always planting those seeds because our students are the ones who are changing the future. And so, just by repeating some kind of narratives of humanity with our students, I think we are putting that little seed where it needs to be and it needs to flourish. So lately more than ever. So, but thank you so much, Isabella, for those two great questions. Um, so I'm just here to introduce two wonderful education professionals and leaders and advocates for our communities, both Cristinas, which is a coincidence tonight. Cristina Andrade Meli is a high school English teacher, and she was the 2023 Missouri Teacher of the Year and a recognized leader in education advocacy in public education. So, Cristina, welcome, and we're so happy to have you today. And then Cristina Melesio, first grade teacher, community advocate, and future law student whose work bridges education, policy, and community organizing. So I'm really glad to have both of you here because you represent two areas, very necessary areas of our um, our journey, mainly these days. I think that it's important to also focus on that we are living in very extraordinary times, and our voices need to be louder and more intelligent than ever. So, with further ado, I would like to start asking both of you, and since we have both Christinas, we agreed to use our last names. So can you share a moment with us when you realized that teaching alone was not enough and that you needed to put that piece of advocacy as part of your educational journey?
Do you want to start, Christina?
Absolutely, I can think about it. So I think a moment that I realized that teaching alone was not going to be enough. Like you mentioned, I don't think that there was a single moment, like a singular one that stands out. But as I started to ask questions about what we could do for our students to serve them better, as I started to ask questions for our education professionals, teachers, custodians, food service workers, secretaries in the building, how could we serve them better? As I started to get the answer of, there's nothing else we can do. This is just the way that it is. I think at that point I realized that that wasn't good enough. And that if that was the way that it is within the four walls of my classroom, that I needed to reach out and connect with people who could make that world a little bit bigger. So I think that that happened gradually over time, but it became this pressure that I couldn't ignore.
Yeah, I think I agree as well because mine definitely happened in the beginning of my career as a teacher because once I realized that I had so many transient students who were in and out of the classroom. I mean, I was starting with 26 and then five would drop and then five would come in. And I realized that, they were leaving the classroom because of things like affordable housing, because of immigration, because of all these outside factors that I could not impact. And that as a teacher, I could only give so much information to them. And if they were constantly in and out and I was getting new groups of students all of the time, I really couldn't teach kids and get them to where they needed to be when all of these outside factors were happening. And once that happened, I realized I was like, okay, I need to do something about this. We have to figure some things out to help our families and our students and our communities because as much as I'm putting my effort into the classroom, it's not going to be enough if they still are having all these outside factors affect them. And there's nothing I could do about those ones. And that's when I was like, all right, we gotta find a way to impact students and families in our communities.
Absolutely. And that's one of the I think we've been briefly talking before our formal chat right now about there's so many hats that we have to wear and how we define educational leadership. So if Andrade, if you don't mind sharing with us when you hear this educational leadership, what does come to mind? Is that just a formal title that we give some administrators, or is it expands to other areas?
I think it's a role that we all end up fulfilling, sometimes on purpose and sometimes by accident, whether we go into administration or not. Um, while Christina was talking, I realized sort of her journey, and I think probably the journey that many of us go on is the same journey, going all the way back to Dolores Huerta, right? That realization that I can serve my students by organizing their parents,
Mhm.
right? And for some of us, that may look like serving our students by going into administration, of course.
Mhm.
For me, and I think for many of us, that organization or that leadership comes from the classroom, that sense of teacher leadership, of advocating for issues maybe that just affect my grade level or a particular group of students or a community. But being a teacher holds so much trust in the community that those voices can be so important to have in conversations. It doesn't have to come with a formal leadership role or even a specific direction of this is what I want to do. Just when you see a need that you can help with, to dive in.
And I can see that the three of us, we all work with these communities for whom maybe the curriculum and everything is not made specifically for, and a lot of times they don't feel welcome, and that's why I work really hard on heritage languages. How do you build that trust, Cristina Melesi, if you want to start? How do you build that trust with your families? Because I hear you constantly talk about the word like serving. How do you serve and how do you meet those basic needs? How do you build that trust with your communities and your families?
Yeah, I think I mean, it's twofold. Is the first one isn't fun, but it's time, right? It takes time for people to feel trust for you and to start to believe in you. And mostly, I think like that's the first part is time, and then the second one is showing up and being there consistently. And so I think about a time where my first year of teaching, it was my first time in my building, and I had a parent who was less than thrilled with my style of teaching, and she didn't love me, and she told me, she let me know. She was like, I don't like this, I don't like this, I think you need to be like this. And I was like, oh, understood. I thank you for letting me know. And I felt like I was at first I felt like it was an attack, right? Or that it was on me. And then I was like, okay, so I do need to be better, and here's how I can do these things. And then, I've been at my school for 7 years, the entire time. And then once I started to connect with my families and with my students, they see me year after year after year. That by the time I had her youngest one, she loved me, right? Like it went from a complete 180. It was, I don't think you're doing these things right, you need to be strict, to I really appreciate you, thank you for doing what you're doing. And being excited to see me every time and always greeting me and bringing me little trinkets. And that really just took time to build our trust. And I just don't think we can go into communities and tell them what they need or how to function. Is we just need to ingrain ourselves in there by showing up and giving it time for them to trust us.
Absolutely. Do you want to answer that, Andrade? Or are you good with that
I think that
answer?
it's going to come up. I think it's going to come up.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much. That listening plus humanity, I think, is like the key for building that trust. Also, sometimes we don't find that community within our schools. In my case, this is one of the reasons why every time LEC asks me to do anything, I'll do anything for them, because I think those outside community organizations are very important. Do you have an example of any partnership that any of you have done with any community organization that has led to any meaningful change for your students or their families or for yourselves?
So this is where I think the building trust is about to come up very quickly. This is a story that doesn't have an ending quite yet, but a partnership that that a core of teachers and counselors in my school district currently has is with the Migrant and Immigrant Community Action Network in St. Louis, the MICA project. Unfortunately, in April, we had police officers come to one of our middle schools acting with ICE. They came seeking two students, so 12-year-olds, during the school day from outside of our community. And our school district, thankfully, was proactive. There was a plan in place. All of the staff moved very quickly to make sure that all of our students and our staff were safe. But following that event, I think a number of us stood up and said, this is not right. This is terrible for our students. It's terrible for our community. It's terrible for our district. And in partnering with the MICA project, right now that partnership is one of the first things that we did was showed up at a board of trustees meeting for that jurisdiction, 4 miles down the road, not even within our school district, to say this happened and this was not right. But that partnership is continuing to work and looking at ways and discussing with the entire community of Hillsdale, knocking on doors, engaging with residents to end this agreement. This is a 287G agreement that enables local police officers to act as ICE agents. So that's a story that is ongoing. We know that it's not going to be a quick ending. We know that it's going to take time, but we also know that we have to build trust in that community. We as outside folks cannot come in and say, this is what you have to do. We've really started, one of the ways we're building trust in that municipality is by asking questions. Hey, your police department is doing this. Were you aware of this? Were you consulted on this? What are your feelings about this? What questions would you have? And so we're really leading with curiosity, as well as compassion, understanding that this is an under-resourced area, that there are a lot of factors that may be going into their decisions, but also keeping that clarity about what is right for our entire region and for our students and just for us as humans. So, hopefully if we come back and we speak again in 6 months or a year, I hope to have a happy ending for us. But that's an example of something ongoing where just educators, normal people, everyday people have said, no, I have time. I will make time for this meeting. I will make time to go knock on doors or to run these copies at the library, to contribute and try to make a meaningful change.
Yes, unfortunately, I think a lot of us are dealing with these violent attacks on our families. And I'm really happy that Cristina Melesio has decided to go into the law route, because we do also need educational lawyers that defend our communities. Can you develop a little bit about this change in your career? Because I think it really relates to what Cristina Andrade was talking about on how to expand our level of leadership outside the four walls of our classroom.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's kind of been in my mind for a while. I actually did Teach for America, so I didn't get my degree in education. And so I did political science and public administration in Spanish. And then I did Teach for America, brought me to Kansas City because I'm originally from Minnesota. I loved teaching. I stayed teaching for 7 years. And I think I applied to law school a couple times. And then I just pulled out because it's like, I love teaching. I don't want to leave the classroom. And this past year really solidified that I needed to go because I do love the classroom. I love teaching. I love being with my students. But I was working, which we'll hit a question later, but I was working with a organization, and we were getting trained as educators in Kansas City on what to do if we were having ICE show up at our schools, and how to have a plan and how to build a coalition together at our schools for this. And while that was happening, the majority of the time, every single time, our first response was to get students to be safe and to get families to know what was happening, and then to call a lawyer. Was get a lawyer, call the lawyers from the district so they can come on campus, so they can read making sure that everything that they were actually allowed to come. And that was the response every single time. And all I could think was like, I wish I could be the person to help. Like, I wish I could do more, because all I can do in that scenario is wait, right? I can make sure my kids are safe, and then I have to wait. And so after hearing that, because I did a couple of trainings and I heard that response multiple times, and I was like, okay, this is it. I've always had an itch to go. I want to try it. And I know that like I need to be able to have the expertise to do this, and the classroom will always be there. And so I'm really, really sad. We cried a lot at the end of the year, but I just know it's like, okay, if I go and I do it and this is just not what I want to do, I can always go back to the classroom, but I need to at least try, because I think my interest is immigration law. And if it's not immigration law, it's education law, working with children, and making sure that they have what they need and teachers have what they need to be successful in the classroom. And so it's one of the two, but I'm like, oh, these are the things that are affecting students. And almost every time when we ask questions, it's, oh, well, we have to ask a lawyer. And I was just like, okay, I've always wanted to do it, and that means it's time. I've been told too many times that there's nothing I can do. I need to make a plan so that I can do something as well.
That's fantastic. I really appreciate that. I mean, I think all of us who are in this together, we're looking for ways to serve our communities, and we just don't go with that answer that there's nothing we can do. Because I think at the beginning, you say it now, those answers that are always dismissals of what we see constantly in our classrooms, and what we see can be changed if we're intentional about it. So what about, I'm thinking now within your schools, we've been talking about organizations also outside your schools, and I like that I hear you saying we. I'm a linguist, so I noticed those little things. What are coalitions or groups within your school? Are you supported by others, or do you have to always go somewhere else to look for that support as educational leaders such as you?
I think it's a mixture that those coalitions within the building, sometimes they're not so formal as to be coalitions. A lot of times the most meaningful partnerships that I've had have been with my next door classroom neighbors, or my departmental neighbors further down the hallway or in another building. One of my most meaningful support groups when I was early in my career were the other speech and debate team coaches. Just finding someone who is in the same reality that I am, finding that person who could relate and who could affirm what I was going through. Sometimes that was the most meaningful person that I could connect with. I would say other coalitions, especially around issues, I think I've looked a lot to the teachers union. The Rittner NEA is our local union. And so we've been able to do a lot of action around issues that impact our classrooms, just because we have a lot of numbers and there's a lot of strength there, and there's an existing relationship with the district. I'm also fortunate in our district, we have a teachers of color affinity group. It's not just limited to Latino, Latinx teachers, or to African American teachers, but all of us coming together. That again becomes a powerful place that we can use our voices to address common concerns. And it also has become a place that I've really practiced being an ally to a lot of those equity issues, right? Like there are spaces that I have access to, or places that my voice is listened to, where I can raise those concerns. I can make sure that they're being heard while my colleagues might not be front and center there. So I think it develops that relationship, right? That like we can support each other, that when there's a cause that's important for my community, I can come back to these groups and say, hey, we've worked together on this, and now I need your help. It's a relationship.
Absolutely. I think that's the same thing. I mean, we definitely, it starts small, right? I at one point in time when, again, I did Teach for America, so I have a lot of their things right forefront is, but one of the things that we were told, it was that it takes three teachers. It takes three teachers to create change in a classroom, or sorry, into a building. And I took that with me, right? They were saying, yeah, at certain buildings, you might hear that it's really negative there, or that it's the culture is really bad, or that this, and all it takes to change is three teachers, right? Because if it's just two, you have these two going back and forth, and oh, this is a bummer, this isn't a good time. But if you have three people together, you can build something and get other people involved, and it just three gets it going. And so when you have, like, it starts small and it doesn't feel like it's a lot and you're not doing much, but that three turns into four, and then to 8, and then to 10. And then all of a sudden you have coalitions like you were speaking about with, and previously with immigration, is that started from just a school to continuously, hey, let's look at these policies that are happening. And I think that's just the biggest thing, is that to build a coalition is you have to start small. You can't just overnight turn into something huge. And I think that it can be discouraging, but also it's really beautiful, because you can look back a year from now and see, wow, that's where we started and this is where we're at. We've made a lot of growth, and that's just, it gives a lot of hope.
Yeah. And you kind of answered my part of my question. My next question which was advice for educators who feel kind of isolated in their roles, and they would like to lead and to influence others, but they don't have that formal leadership positions that we were talking before. So thank you for that advice. It's fantastic. I don't know if Christine Andrade has any other advice for these educators who are looking for a stronger voice within their communities.
I mean, my primary advice would be to start where you are and to do what you can. I think it's very easy when you're looking at a large injustice to say, well, it's just me. What can I do in my little corner? But taking that first step and raising your voice, sharing a concern with your administrator that I'm concerned about the safety of our students in this building. Whether that person can say, yes, I share that, they might be the connection to the next person who can really hook you into something. So simply to get started with what you care about and to find others who care about the same thing. I think that's the most important advice when it comes to getting started.
Fantastic. And then we all know, I think the three of us have experienced that that resistance, that when you start to be critical of the system that you get. So this change making often involves this resistance that usually comes from above, but sometimes from our own colleagues. Can you share a time when you encountered this opposition to an idea or initiative that you believed in, and how do you respond? What do you learn about that experience? Maybe you right now you have done it differently with what you know, right? When I started in education, I was an immigrant educator, so I saw everything from a different lens, right? So I was very loud, and I'm also a Spaniard, which we are very loud, and we look like we're always angry, and we're not. We're just like, I don't like this, and we're used to that conflict.
Passionate.
Well,
Yes.
yeah, but
Karen.
I wasn't used to the Midwest nice way of doing things, and I think I've burned a lot of bridges by being so confrontational. So how do you navigate? Do you have any stories of how you navigate that resistance, if you have?
I can't think of a story specifically on what I've like pushed for when I've had resistance, but I think I have ways that I've handled it before because it has happened in the past. And I have the same, I mean, I think that's just very common for my dad. We call it excited. We get really excited. That's just been our term since I was little. And I know that sometimes I come off very strong as well. And so, one, I always have to tell myself to take a second and ask this in a question format. So actually, I can think of an example that I'm saying this is there's been times where my school district has come in and they've asked for opinions. They come in and they say, hey, come get a free lunch and tell us what you think about this. And then once, I give feedback, it's not received well. And after the first time that happened, the second time when I went, I was like, okay, this time I know that I'm going to come in. I'm going to ask these questions first. And when I first went in, I was like, well, I don't understand this. Why would we do it this? Or have we thought about this? And that's kind of how I went forward when I was asking my questions. And the second time that came by, I actually knew, I was like, I know what questions I want to ask, and I'm going to go in there. And so one, changed the tone, the way I asked something. Instead of saying, well, why would we do this? I was like, I'm wondering, where does this thought come from? And so I started phrasing my questions with an I'm wondering, or, and, oh, what I hear you saying is this. And so I started learning some phrases on how to ask questions in a way that might not, because overall, people don't want to feel like they're being attacked or that what they thought was wrong, or what they're thinking was, and you're saying, oh, no, you're wrong, or, oh, that was bad. No one wants to feel that. It feels like a personal attack, even if it's a professional criticism. And I think that that's been one of the ways that I've been facing resistance, is when they're like, oh, no, we want to be equitable with this choice. I was like, well, what I have seen or what I've heard that equitable actually is making sure that everyone gets what their needs are met, but not just getting the same thing. And then that was like, oh, well, yeah, I guess that is the way this. So that's kind of how I've dealt with resistance, is unfortunately rephrasing the way that I say things, and then also the tone that I say things. And then also oftentimes coming with examples to back up what I'm saying, is if oh yeah, in this building, this is how they do things. And that makes sense because their building does these things from their classroom sizes. And they're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. It's like, but that wouldn't work for our building because X, Y, and Z. And so every time I'm coming with something, I have rationale, like prepared, so that I can explain myself, and then they can understand like why I am giving pushback versus like, oh, I'm doing a personal attack on what you are saying.
I think what I would add on, because I get the leading with questions, right? The thinking about tone. I lived a past life as a theater kid, and so I have all sorts of lessons from like improv that I feel like come in. Sometimes when you're pushing for change, it does feel like an improv comedy show. Um, the piece that I think I've learned to also bring in with me, along with those examples, is to think about the decision maker I'm speaking to and make sure I'm speaking their language. Um, Administrators love data. Uh, whether that is, well, we've surveyed the teachers and this number of teachers says that they've really struggled to finish their grades on time because of this schedule change, and they would like this change. Or whether it's data about students feeling welcomed or students achieving, right? Figuring out what information is going to be persuasive to that person and then bringing that to the conversation has really been something I've learned about tackling resistance. And probably even more important than that, and something I learned really, really early on, was that I had to keep looking for my yes. Just because I got a no from the first person or the second person or the third person, I had to find that yes. Maybe it was that I wasn't asking the person with the jurisdiction over what I wanted, or maybe I needed to find an ally who could help me get the other people to a yes. Or maybe it was that I needed to start small, that the yes would be in my hallway first, and then I could bring that data to the principal and say, well, look at what we did. These were the supports that we put in place for our multilingual learners this quarter, and it really worked. Maybe you'd like to try this. I think that those are really the things that have helped those conversations be more persuasive and maybe move more towards action.
And to add on to that, what I've done in the past years, I think like 3-4 years, is, well, I'm a researcher and I document everything. So I used to just email, but now all my emails are like proposals, so that they have to read. And sometimes, I was like, oh no, another Dr. Silva wrote another email. But I think that's important because then I can take a look back at my proposal. And every time I go into any space, I bring it with me. And I say, as I sent this proposal to this specific administrator, and then like you guys, if I don't have an answers from that administrator or leader, I will go to somebody else. That I will go also to the Board of Education. Just I think it's very important to be transparent also, because I don't know if you in your districts, but it's important that nobody feels like you're doing something on anybody's back, and that criticism is something positive, because we're trying to do is to improve, right? We're not just being critical to diminish the value of our schools. Is the opposite. It's like, hey, we can see this and we can offer that. So I think all these sometimes walking on eggshells is exhausting, but it needs to be done. And do you both think this is our status as immigrants or kids or grandkids of immigrants or Latine descent, or does it have anything to do, or even being the three of us being women? Do you think it has any impact on it, or is just any new idea, any new initiative is taken the same way? What do you guys think? Oh, in your experience?
Yes. I think all three. Yes, overall, yes. I think that for a really long time, I grew up and in a predominantly white area. My dad is an immigrant from Mexico, and my mom is from Minnesota. And she's Weta, that's just who she is. And so I grew up being both, and I grew up in a very, very white town. And that's just what was normal to me. And then I went to a PWI for, undergrad. And when I was there, like, I didn't realize that there was a difference. I had experiences growing up and that was something else, but I didn't realize that me being in a specific role, being a woman or being a woman of color, had an impact on that until I was the president of my university for student government. And when I was doing that, someone was like, "Oh, good for you for doing this, as a Latina woman, as a woman of color." And I was like, "I'm not the first one to do it. What do you mean?" And I was like, I want to be more recognized, well, which is amazing. I was thinking we were going to be talking about the things that I was trying to get changed at the university. Why is that first thing that we're thinking of? And it's my identity is part of me, and I show up and that's the first thing people see. And so that's often what they identify me with, even if that's not the first thing that I'm thinking. Maybe it was something else. And I think they see that at face value right away. And so that's what comes out no matter what. And sometimes we can be also, if it's being known as naggy or whiny because you're a woman who's just complaining. And it's like, no, I'm not complaining. I actually have data and facts to back up what I'm trying to show you. And I'm not complaining. I'm telling you how the reality of what it is like in the classroom, or what the reality is for my team right now. And so I think it definitely shows up in ways that I wasn't expecting, because that's not the forefront of my mind. This is what I deal with every day. But apparently for some folks, that's not how it is. And so, yes, I absolutely think so.
I think good for you is the Midwestern version of bless your heart.
Yes.
Really. It's never really, oh, good for you.
Yeah. Like, okay, thanks.
Thanks, I think. Okay. Good for you too, buddy. I think in some ways, our stories in some very important ways, I think, are parallel. My father was also an immigrant from Mexico, and my mom is Illinoisian. So, like, again, that very much that feeling of being in two worlds, kind of what has stood out to me more recently, I think, just in my journey and my reflections, is how that's impacted the way that I present myself. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, right, rock star, but she put something into words. Like, I read this in an interview. Oh, kids are coming in to get toys on the other side of the porch. There may be a little background noise for a second. In an interview, she was talking about her identity, right? Always sort of having to grow up in two places, right? Having to switch. I'm going to switch for just a second into mom mode, and then I'll be right back.
I love this. I think this is part of who we are.
Absolutely.
Yes.
It's parenting in public. It just sort of always is. But having to be in those two worlds, right? An example of that being right now, you learn how to adjust so quickly on your feet, right? Mm-hmm. You learn how to talk to different people. I, as a woman, as a mom and a professional, as a Latina, as someone who is still young-ish and still gets mistaken for a high schooler sometimes, I don't get to walk into a room and say, this is how it's going to be. Mm-hmm. I don't get to walk into a room and just do it by fiat or expect that I have that respect. Like, I have naturally sort of learned how to place my feet and how to walk that way. And that's a skill that not everyone develops. And they sort of run into that place where, well, if I don't have the hard power, then I can't get anything done. And there's a lot of frustration. I see administrators, men particularly, run into where, like, well, no one's listening to me, and they should, of course, listen to me because I'm in charge. And the women I see navigate that much better. And the women of color, particularly, they mm-hmm. can't just rule by force. We have to be fluid. And so I've sort of found that really is a strength, even though in the developing of that strength, it did not feel like a benefit all the time. It felt much harder. But I think it's really a skill that I've developed, and that we have to develop just to move through the world.
Yes. And this is also, like, I think, like motherhood and, advocacy, leadership, it can be incredibly rewarding, but it also exhausting, right? So I would like to ask you, because I hope that future educators or educators who are starting, they also understand that there's gonna be a lot of push back and forth in their unique journey. So how do you both sustain your commitment to the work while maintaining some kind of balance, some kind of joy, and some hope with the stories that we've been telling today about ICE presence in our schools, lack of basic necessities, etc. So how do you sustain this, this balance, joy, hope for yourselves?
I think for me, mine would be my parents, my entire life, they are the most resilient people I have ever met. And they've gone from having absolutely nothing to building themselves businesses and just doing phenomenal things. And part of that is because they have said growing up all the time is, when it rains, it pours. And we're not quitters. Milesios don't quit. Milesios don't quit. We're not going to quit. We don't quit. And so this has been in my brain since forever, that at one point when I was having a really hard time my first year of teaching, because of course, they were like, just quit. You're so miserable. Just quit. And I was like, you have never told me to quit any time in my life ever. I'm like, what do you mean? This is the time. I mean, because I moved this time, I was from 2 states away, and they felt so helpless. They're like, we can't help you. We don't know what to do. Just quit. And so that was their thing, was just, they were like, for the first time in my entire life, they were telling me to quit something. And I was like, hang on. You have always told me that Milesios don't quit. Like, I can't quit. And so for me, I have just in the back of my mind is that, like, I don't quit. We don't quit things. We go through, we follow through, and we try. And I had to find little pieces in my life of the things that I liked and set that time aside, because then in the classroom as well, once my instructional coach had told me that the list never ends, right? You are going to forever have a list of things to do, and it's never going to be done. You could stay up for hours and hours, and it will always have something on it. And so she was like, just do what you can do to survive today, and then the list will be there tomorrow. And so both of those mentalities at the same time in my brain was, okay, I need to take care of myself because I am not a quitter. I can't quit. And I need to put this aside and do it later because I need time for myself and do the things that make me feel as a person and who I am. And I have these things that I like to do with, whether it's like crafting things or reading or taking time with my people. And that's when I really, those two pieces to it, I was like, okay, yeah, I don't have to quit, and I can leave this stuff for tomorrow, so that I can make sure to fulfill my bucket, because you can't pour from an empty bucket was what we're always told, right? So I think that's how I've always handled it.
I think I'm constantly, I have just finished 15 years in the classroom, and I'm still constantly readjusting and figuring out, like, how do I sustain myself in the work, especially as pieces outside of the classroom have continued to expand and that there's more advocacy there. But I think one of the big things that helps sustain me is remembering that this work is generational. Changes in families do not happen overnight. Where my family was just one generation ago is completely different from where it is for my cousins and for me today. So having that, sort of carrying that around with me, helps me remember that it's not my responsibility to fix everything single-handedly. It may not be within my ability to get to a happy ending for every single situation, but it is my responsibility to keep telling that story for as long as I can and to keep pushing it forward. And I think along with that is the reminder to myself that along with it being generational, it's also community. I'm not in the work alone. I'm connecting with people who inspire me to keep doing it, whether it's my mentor teacher who I still take long walks and talk on the phone with, whether it's my colleagues who recharge me, whether it's reading people who inspire me. I think that those are all things that kind of help me keep going. And then just being present in the moment. Like this season as a mom of two young kids, while also really having the teaching and the advocacy pieces coming really hard online. Like we're in a really busy season for all those things. Just reminding myself I can't be all the things at once, that there are going to be seasons where I will be much more fully a teacher, back to school season, parent teacher conference season, that has to be more heavily who I am. But there are also seasons and even times of the day that, nope, I'm in mom mindset. Like, yes, we're going to go to the park. Yes, we're going to go to the pool. Giving myself the ability to be really present in whichever of those things is happening, I think is huge. And being able to do that comes back to having a support network, both in my home, my husband who's wrangling the kids in the background while they're doing, I don't know what, on the other side of the door right now, and having colleagues that I trust back at school that will keep things running when I have to step away. I think that those are really the things that help me out, that help me stay in the work.
That's great. And looking, because we're in our last 10 minutes, so looking toward the future, we have, Cristina Melesio, you're preparing to enter law school. And Cristina Andrade, you've expanded your impact through teacher leadership, union leadership, also statewide advocacy. So your paths are different, but also reflect that common commitment to educational change, both of you. I'm so happy to have met you here. So what do your experience teach us about the many ways that educators can influence systems and communities? So, and this is kind of a question of hope. So how do you think teaching in general, from your perspective, can influence and change those systems that don't work for all communities? And I know it's a big question, but in a sense, it's just looking at the future. What is this hope that we can give new educators, or not just new educators who have been in the classroom for a long time? As you say, we have more and more and more to take care of than ever. So what do you what are experiences that that you can share with us? That's a big one.
It is a big one. It takes a second to think through. I think one of the big messages, one of the things that I would hope people walk away from this conversation with is a knowledge that they can engage in that work. By being an educator, they have a skill set that is perfectly suited to organizing, right? You build relationships with students every day. You problem solve every day. You learn new things every day. And really, in my experience, whether it's in a local board of trustees meeting, whether it's in a congressional office in Washington, D.C., people are people wherever you go. Taking those steps into educational leadership, right? Teacher leadership, no matter which direction it takes you, thinking about it just as making your classroom a little bit bigger, carrying your classroom with you wherever you go. That is something that I think helps keep us centered in the work, that it's all teaching for the good of our students and our communities, and that it can take so many forms. Really, agency, action is that antidote to anxiety. If I'm concerned about something, acting on it is one of the best ways that I can keep myself from falling into despair. And that's something that we all really need help with lately. There's a lot to despair about, but there's also there's so many people acting and helping to counteract those forces.
I think overall, yes, I think that's exactly it. And along with, I really love the phrase of people are people. I love that so much. And I think additionally is that it's that no one's alone. And so at one point in time, one of the trainings I took, they had mentioned that the people that we're advocating for, it's not because they don't have a voice. right? Like they have voices, they are strong, they can do the things. And so I think reminding ourselves as well is that we are not the sole person in charge of this. We're not the only person who is going to be making change. And quite frankly, we are the ones who are sometimes need to take a step back, right? If that's not our space to be the one who's the front and center, then we don't have to. And so reminding ourselves that like, okay, we can take a step back and let somebody else take this on because this might be more suited for them. And so it's just like being able to find that community and that connection and being able to know when it's time to step up and take charge and other times to sit back and be a support for those who are the ones who are taking charge.
Absolutely. Solo la pueblo, salva la pueblo, right? Like only the people can save the people. It's not one person, right?
Right.
It's us. It's juntos, right? La comunidad. It's everybody together. And that's how you do it. It's the only way.
Yeah.
I love it because none of you come with this savior complex. Like it's,
We don't have time for that.
Yeah, I was gonna say you can't do that when you're in the classroom. Nobody's got time to do that.
You learn very quickly.
But sometimes I think that's how we act instead of how you say, working. And I think both of you work really hard to change the system, the structure, so our communities can flourish in whatever ways they choose to. So I really appreciate that from both of you. And I love to hear the word action constantly because sometimes we just stay in the theoretical hopes of a better world. If those who will be listening or listening to this session, if they could get like committed to an action next year, imagine just to strengthen maybe their school community, to advocate for their students and families, what action would you encourage them to take first? And it can be something very small, and I can give you an example. For example, in my school district, in the area where I teach, we have a very constant presence of ICE. So immigration has been really tough and very steady. So I would really advocate for the district to take very visible actions against or for the humanity of all our immigrant families, right? And I advocate for putting posters everywhere, just making sure that the community understand that we are all together in this. So that would be a call to action that I would do specifically now in the community that I live in. I would like to know which one would you encourage for your district or other districts to start with next year?
Yeah, I mean, I think for mine would be to volunteer because you don't know what you don't know, right? Is especially, I mean, that's why I did Teach for America originally, was because I was taking courses on education policy and redlining and how all this stuff was affecting educators and students. And I was like, oh man, I would love to like change that someday. That's terrible. And then I sat and I thought about it and it's like, well, I don't really think I can go change education policy if I've never been an educator, right? And so like that was this first thing was like I have no idea what teachers need. I have no idea what students need. I have to go and do this. And it doesn't have to be as extreme as getting into a career for 7 years, but it could be so much as volunteering, going into your child's classroom or going into either even a food bank and volunteering there, somewhere that you feel passion, and just volunteer your time because you have no idea what they may need, right? Like going to ask and going to give your time is probably one of the most valuable things you can do, because then that's when you'll learn what is needed from you and how you can really help and start building more connections and feel like you're really connected into a community that is doing more for a lot of folks. Because there's this politician from Minnesota from years ago, and his name's Paul Wellstone, and he says we all do better when we all do better. And it's one of my favorite sayings, is because we all do better when everyone is doing okay, and so we can only get there if we know what other people need. And that's, I think, the best part, is just to volunteer your time so you can learn and do better.
And I think I'm going to echo some things that you already said of for someone who's just getting started, of like, I want to start expanding outside of my classroom. I would say the first thing to do is just reflect on what are those things that drive you, that bother you, that are screaming out for change. Figure out one of those things, because we also, I feel like, tend to burn ourselves out when we try to tackle all of the things at once. Like, it's all of the problems. To pick one thing that is really important, that you're passionate about, and then go find the people doing something about that thing.
Right.
I think that then you can learn about it. Then you can be involved, like, in that momentum, that really taking that first step towards action. And then just continuing to do the next thing that presents itself. You show up to a board of trustees meeting because you're upset that people have come to a middle school. Great. While you're at that meeting, an organizer says, we're going to have a meeting next week at this church. Will you show up? Say yes to the next thing, and then yes to the next thing. And by the time you get to the end of that path of yeses, you're really going to have some amazing action and some amazing people you've connected with.
Well, you both are amazing people. I'm really happy to have met you. And Isabella, I don't know how you're gonna end this session, but I hope that you said everything that you wanted to say here. I hope we keep connected, because I think we need voices like yours and work like yours, and the humanity and knowledge that you and expertise that you present to us. So thank you.